Since Inverse One Piece discussions as of late has been kind of on the slower side of things, I've been trying to put up the One Piece verse against other series. With many series popping in and out through my mind, I kept coming back to wanting to talk about Dragon Ball. But obviously, it being the insanely strong verse it is, there aren't too many comparisons to be made. Then I remembered, we see the Straw Hat Pirates stop countless unstoppable foes, and with them recently becoming a top tier pirate group in their own right, I thought it would be fun to see if they could stop the Saiyans. What's up guys, my name is Verdix, and if you like videos like these, go ahead and hit that sub button. I put out quality content like this weekly, you won't want to miss. Now, before you go rushing to the comments, I'm going to be putting the Straw Hats in the situations the Z Fighters had to face. So we will obviously start with Raditz and work our way up from there. But before we do, let's get the scaling for the Straw Hat Pirates out the way. On the lower ends of the crew, we have the likes of Chopper, Usopp, and Nami. These three really won't be doing nothing other than Chopper, but his usage is different as he is just going to be the team doctor, of course. They are all in battle, honestly useless in this case. They don't have the speed feats to dodge any attacks that of even Raditz can produce. Both Usopp and Chopper just don't do any sort of damage whatsoever. However, you can make an argument for Nami having some decent AP here, and it all comes from Zeus. There's no clear depiction on if Big Mom using Zeus makes him stronger, and if the case is that it doesn't, then Nami has a pretty powerful cloud on her side. Again, we can't confirm or really unconfirm it. Let's speculate for the sake of the video and say she does contain the same power. Then this could give Nami up to continental levels of AP bare minimum if Zeus holds the same power. And if you have seen my recent video on Doflamingo vs Sukuna, you would see you can scale Doflamingo to continental, who Big Mom scales way above. Again, I know there's a bit of a stretch with that, but it's a highball you can use for Nami being of some, and I put in that quotations, some help to this fight. Either way, they all get one shot and blitzed by Raditz. You can argue Nami could put maybe a scratch on him, but then again, that would be if it even hit, which I doubt. The best speed scaling for them is relativistic reaction timing, not movement speeds, and even then, it really doesn't help them much here. The next set of crew members to go over is Franky, Brook, Robin, and Jimbe. The middle class of the crew could potentially play a role in some part here. Jimbe and Franky have the most strength out of the crew members mentioned so far. We see Franky use his Radical Beam to annihilate Sasaki and kinda scare Big Mom with it. He, funny enough, does have a feat on her when he literally runs over her like a Chad. It actually does put her down, funny enough. I don't know how much that would do here, but my god, it would be hilarious to see Franky come in and hit Vegeta with one of those. He also would be able to survive a fucking nuke blowing up a majority of the island he was on pre-time skip, by the way. And then he trained for 2 years, then going through everything they did in the New World. So Franky has surely gotten his durability past island level and his AP being around continental. Upscaling from Doflamingo, who, like we mentioned before, is continental since he can destroy the entirety of Dressrosa with Birdcage. Speaking of Doflamingo, in that arc, we actually see Chinjiao was able to split the ice continent apart. This is a Chinjiao that lost to a weaker version of Luffy that Dofi fought and almost won against. Franky upscales from this. Same goes for Jimbe, who is contentiously above Franky in strength. With his fishman abilities and controls over water, he was able to, like Franky, push Big Mom back in Whole Cake Island and is almost comparable to the big three of the crew, depending on who you ask. Robin and Brook being mostly of use with their abilities, if they use them correctly, they can use both Brook's ice and Robin's arms to prevent one of the Saiyans from using an attack and forcing them to take a lethal blow in the process. That is really all they offer in this fight. They don't have strength of Franky or Jimbe. As for all of their speeds, while they would be relativistic on the lower ends to be light speed, these guys are going to be the main support group for the main three we will discuss next. While the other crew members are useful in their own ways, the monster trio is where we'll see the real combatants of this crew up to the test, as Sanji and Zoro are able to damage Lunarians who are more durable than Kaido. This is important because it requires insane amounts of strength just to hurt him. How strong? Well, we see that an old Whitebeard was stated to have the power to destroy the entire world multiple times. Not only inverse is it said, but it is also said by Oda himself, which I'll put on screen now. We know characters like Akainu can take rage-induced attack from him and come back up only bleeding. The top tiers of One Piece all are considered to be in the same lines of scaling. While yes, the placements of who's stronger is one thing, we are all in agreement, especially with the feats and narrative, that the top tiers have the same scaling as each other when it comes to strength. While they don't have the exact same power as those top tiers, Zoro and Sanji are enough where they can do noticeable damage that generally hurts people more durable than that of Kaido, who it takes planetary AP to defeat. Since Zoro and Sanji can produce feats lower to that level, but massively above the other crewmates who are continental, this would put them around moon level, as they can, like I said, produce damage enough to damage opponents that require planetary level AP to take down. While he doesn't exactly take down Kaido, he does with King. As for Sanji, well, he uses Diable Jimbe that can hurt his Seraphim that has the same Lunarian DNA as King, and if he were to use Ifrit Jimbe here, a lot more damage would be produced. When Zoro uses what is known as his King of Hell mode, he can severely cut his opponents to a very lethal level, which will obviously be effective in this fight. And Sanji, while not having as lethal blows, has speeds, which we'll get into in a second, that lets him continuously hit you with multiple moon level attacks coming at you in insane speeds. While Sanji might not have Zoro's lethal cutting blows, what he does have is his exoskeleton that allows him to regenerate from his bones being broken, which could definitely be useful. Now, I'm hoping you take down these notes for Zoro and Sanji because the speed section is going to be a bit lengthy. As for how fast they are, well, they both obtain insane MFTL or massively faster than light speeds, as pre-time skip Zoro was dodging attacks from Kuma that were stated to be fired at the speed of light. Then we know they went on a 2-year time skip and multiple hard-fought battles in the New World. Even at the start of the time skip, Luffy considered the speed of light to be too slow. Yes, this is a base start of time skip Luffy calling the speed of light too slow. Then, based off his calculated gear multipliers, which goes into Luffy's speed, gets him into the likes of MFTL and the current state of the story. I've gone over this before, and to not make this video too long, I'll quickly summarize the gear multiplier. But before I do, just remember, these aren't confirmed. This is the best scaling I could come up with and see people agree on the most. Back in NA's lobby, we got the closest thing we ever did to power levels, with the Doriki system, in which we see Blueno is an 820 and Lucci is a 4000. Then, when divided, it would be a 4.8 times or rounded up 5 times, meaning there is a 5 times strength difference here. The reason I bring this up is because until Luffy learned Gear 2, he couldn't even fight against Blueno, let alone Lucci. He obviously demolished Blueno and then went on to fight and win against Lucci. The thing with the Doriki system, however, is this was talking about base Lucci and not taking into account his hybrid form. Saying otherwise would be saying Gear 2 Luffy was on par with base Lucci, who we saw press into going into his hybrid form and even defeat, meaning this would be an even higher boost than 5 times. If we go off what Blueno says about Zoro, you need to tap the floor 10 times in the blink of an eye to achieve this. However, Luffy is straight up replicating this ability on a physical level. For those who may forget, Zoro was a flash step-like ability where CP9 vanished. Luffy was moving so fast that Blueno not only thought himself he was using that technique, but was getting blitzed even when using it, making him even faster than that. This would put Gear 2 around 10 times multiplier, meaning not only in base is Luffy and by proxy Zoro and Sanji currently in the series would be massively faster than light, but they both, Sanji especially, can move around the speeds of Gear 2. This is also a Luffy that throughout the New World gets way faster, being able to move fast enough that looking into the future just doesn't matter. Also, in the Gear 2 levels of speed, Zoro would be able to compete considering he went up and could react to King with his flames off, who is also near the top of verse in speed. But Sanji might be even faster and scaled to if not above Luffy's fastest speeds, as when fighting Doflamingo, he activates Gear 4 and Dofi stated he was several times stronger than when getting hit by Gear 2. Several oftentimes meaning 3 to 4, showing Gear 4 is 3 to 4 times stronger than Gear 2, being a 30 to 40 times multiplier from base. He also has an even faster form that can't be calced in Snake Man, which like I said, Sanji is the same levels of speed as, if not faster, as he was able to actually go invisible, and Perception Blitz Queen, who may not seem like much at first, but this was a queen who, while in base, was able to perceive Marco, who was able to partially keep up with the holding back Kizaru. Sanji is faster than this, and is thought to have turned invisible based off on how fast he was moving. This is something not even Luffy has done yet, and can be used to scale Sanji higher in speed than Luffy. Speaking of which, we will get into the last Straw Hat, but just to remind you, I have Zoro and Sanji at MFTL speeds with moon level AP. Now, for Luffy, since we have already gone over the multipliers, we already know how he can scale him. Obviously, being faster than Zoro and around Sanji in speed, he would scale to MFTL levels of speed, but the main difference that sets him apart from the rest is both his strength and Gear 5 abilities. During his fight with Kaido, he was able to compete and even overpower him at multiple points in the fight. This was a Kaido that was stated earlier requires planetary level AP to take down, as the likes of Moon AP was only able to make a shallow wound against him that couldn't even put him on a knee. Luffy of course eclipsed that level of strength and was able to defeat Kaido. During his victory, he unlocked Gear 5 that gives him freedom through rubber, allowing him to manipulate anything he wants into his desire as long as it can be done with rubber. Either flowing it through objects, himself, or even others, his arsenal is only limited to his mind. The attacks that he lands within this state was able to shake Kaido a lot more than any attack he took before. as simple non-named attacks where Luffy is testing out his newfound abilities was literally tossing him around back and forth, and once he got serious in this form, he was able to use Bearjang Gun, which overpowered and defeated Kaido in the end of Wano. Luffy would not only have MFTL levels of speed, but planetary level AP as well. The one downside to Luffy's abilities, more specifically Gear 5, is his time limit. He can only last 5 minutes when using this form, but because of the circumstances for this fight, he can take a break and eat to restore his energy and get back up like he was consistently throughout Egghead and even a bit in Wano. Now, to go over the scaling for the Straw Hats one more time, we have on the lower ends with Usopp, Chopper, and Nami being mostly fodder with relativistic speeds and city block AP, except for Nami, who could produce at bare minimum continental level AP with Zeus. The middle class and Frankie, Robin, Brook, and Jimbe would be relativistic as well, with all around continental levels of AP, upscaling from Nami and Doflamingo. For the monster trio, both Zoro and Sanji scale to MFTL, with Sanji being a lot faster and having moon levels of attack potency for both of them. Of course, the Captain Luffy being the strongest is also MFTL levels in speed and planetary in terms of attack potency. Since he is first, let's discuss Raditz' strength and how he would fare against the Straw Hats. The Saiyans are a lot more concrete and direct with their scaling, as it with all of Dragon Ball. Now, back during the Saiyan saga, we saw Raditz bully the likes of Goku and Piccolo, and they just couldn't compete with him. The same Goku and Piccolo that was a couple times stronger than Master Roshi, who could blow up the moon back during OG Dragon Ball. We see Piccolo actually perform the same feat shortly after the fight with Raditz, in which he effortlessly with one hand destroyed the moon. This blast also reached and blew up the moon in mere seconds, showing Piccolo is able to shoot out FTL beams as far back as his fight with Raditz. Another thing is that this wasn't his full strength, and like we discussed, Piccolo was already a couple times stronger than Roshi back when he fought Goku, but then he trained for 5 years straight. As we know, Piccolo never stops training, got multiple times more faster and stronger than a Roshi he was already stronger than that could destroy the moon. If this doesn't prove small planetary level feats from Piccolo, then Raditz, who is utterly thrashing him, would definitely scale to this, if not higher, into planetary to large planetary territories of AP. As for his speed, well, remember how Piccolo was able to shoot FTL beams? Well, when he is using his special named attacks that are stronger and faster, they are still missing him. He is effortlessly dodging these attacks, and it's to the point Goku had to hold him in place for these beams to land, showing that Raditz has most definitely FTL level speeds, if not MFTL. How does this compare to the Straw Hat Pirates? Well, Raditz would be a massive problem to one-shot the lesser crewmates. The monster trio would be able to compete and keep up with them enough to make Raditz focus on them. Depending on how serious he starts, Luffy would be able to go step for step and even blow for blow with him, in my opinion. I actually think that if he takes the fight seriously, there is enough of a chance that he, with Zoro and Sanji's assistance, could be enough to get it done, just them three, as those ACOG attacks are going to be hitting Raditz like a mountain. And if Sanji and Zoro are also next to Luffy going for kill shots, Raditz would have to dodge every attack thrown at him. Mind you, Raditz getting shot through the chest by Piccolo was enough to kill him. If Zoro were to cut his torso or head off, he might be able to land the kill move himself. To be honest, in a 1v1 scenario, Raditz messes up everyone except Luffy. We then have someone in Luffy himself that can compete with him in speed and power, followed by Zoro and Sanji. With the rest of the crewmates and assistants, one thing they could do is have Robin grab a hold of his tail and keep him in place, to which then any one of the monster trio could land a lethal blow on him. It would be a hard fought battle, but ultimately the Straw Hats would outnumber and be too much for him. The Straw Hats get past Raditz. Now, Raditz was a problem in his own right for sure, but Nappa and Vegeta are completely different monsters. After the defeat of Raditz, the Z Fighters went on to train for the arrival of the Saiyans. When they arrived, we see that they have the ability to plant Cybermen out the ground. These beings are stated to each be equal to Raditz with a power level of 1200, but aren't too much of a match for the Z Fighters, except for that one guy, but yeah, he's the outlier here. But this shows the likes of Piccolo, Krillin, and Tien are able to pretty easily overpower and defeat them, showing they are all now much stronger than Raditz was. However, this still isn't enough to do much at all to Nappa, and especially not Vegeta of all people, as we see Tien get his arm straight punched off by Nappa, and Chaozu try to blow himself up to stop him, but ends up failing. Nappa's armor doesn't even get scratched by this. Even when Tien gets a rage amp from Chaozu's death and shoots one of his strongest attacks, he is still getting mollywopped and eventually killed by Nappa. It is not until Piccolo and Krillin do a combined attack that he takes damage, but even then he is just fine. He then goes on to put the beats on them. Now, two feats they have on him that could be useful for the Straw Hat side is Destructo Disc being able to cut him apart if not for Nappa dodging it, and an Infant Gohan drawing blood from him. He then, out of anger, fires a blast that annihilates and kills Piccolo. This shows not only does Nappa just massively upscale from Raditz, but he was able to utterly thrash and defeat multiple fighters even higher than that level of Raditz. It's not until Goku comes back that he gets put down. We would scale Nappa to large to multiplanetary level AP and durability with MFTL level speeds. But as for how this would play out against the Straw Hats, well, again, putting them in the shoes the Z Fighters were, they would all be fighting Nappa collectively. I'ma just come out and say it, if both Vegeta and Nappa were to team up, this fight wouldn't even be close, and the Saiyans would utterly dominate. As for them all versus Nappa, well, the monster trio would be in for much more of a challenge than ever before, as not only would Nappa be speeding around the battlefield even faster than the likes of Luffy and Sanji, not only this, but the attacks Nappa lands on them would be devastating, as Tien, who is stronger than all of them, was getting tossed around and having his head punched off by him. If he were to collide with something like Sanji's leg with a punch, then the outcome wouldn't be so good for the cook. They would also have a hard time dealing great deals of damage, as we see Raditz level attacks are stronger than what Zoro and Sanji can produce, and guys that are way stronger than Raditz are getting annihilated by Nappa and doing no damage. As for Luffy in Gear 5, well, the abilities could definitely throw off Nappa, and some of the attacks he could land would be effective. However, unless he were to pull something like a Bear gun off quickly, which in character I don't think he would do, then maybe they could do something to Nappa. However, using this attack would take out all his energy, and then the rest of the Straw Hats would have to hold off Nappa until Luffy rests and eats up, which in that circumstance, even being weakened by Bear gun, he would still have more than enough energy to get back up and fight off the rest of the crew. He could also casually just nuke the battlefield Luffy is laying in with his fingers, just like he did with the city. At this point in the fight, it's very hard for me to confidently say the Straw Hats have a chance. The problem would be Luffy running out of stamina too quickly, and the rest of the Straw Hats having their limbs torn off in single punches. Mind you, that he is also able to keep up with, if not outright faster than all of them, so he would be easily blitzing around and decapitating them. Not only this, but even when trying to grab his tail, Piccolo is easily thrown off of him. I don't think Robin's hands would do too much here, and even if, I don't know what attack would actually take him out. On top of this, we did not see him use it in the series, but we know he has a Great Ape transformation that amplifies his stats by 10 times the monster he already is. Yeah, I'm gonna be honest, while Raditz wouldn't be a too tough matchup for the Straw Hats to win against, Nappa is just an unwinnable foe for them at the moment, let alone Vegeta of all people, who massively upscales from Nappa. At this point in the story, the Straw Hats have shown very strong powers, but they just don't match up to what the Saiyans are capable of. You would have a very hard time convincing me they get past Nappa, and no world exists where they currently, where they're at, defeat or even deal damage to Vegeta. So could the Straw Hats stop the Saiyans? No, they cannot. Well, that's it for you guys. If you did enjoy, make sure to subscribe and leave a like. It really helps with the algorithm and is very appreciated. Shout out to Tiberius for the thumbnail. He makes quality thumbnails for me all the time. And if you would like some of your own, hit him up on Twitter, link in the description, as well as my Twitter @verdicts_ for more of my takes. And without further ado, you guys can get out of here.